Okay, so some more things about oxygen and myoglobin as we have studied. So myoglobin basically is present in the skeletal muscle cells, and as we know that the skeletal muscle cells require an extra amount of energy. So during heavy exercise or during whatever, so their energy requirement is higher, which means that more oxygen needs to be supplied to them. So to release oxygen from myoglobin, okay, the partial pressure of oxygen has to be below 20 millimeter of Hg. So as we have seen in the earlier slide, there were two graphs. One is for the normal hemoglobin and one is for the myoglobin. So in myoglobin, even if the partial pressure of oxygen is 20 millimeter, less than that, okay, the oxygen will be released. From myoglobin, the POT has to be below 20 millimeter of Hg. But if you consider hemoglobin, hemoglobin, the partial pressure of O2 at this pressure will become almost half. Okay, we have seen that this will almost become half. If the partial pressure of oxygen falls below 20 millimeter of Hg, what will happen is that oxyhemoglobin will already have given its 50% of oxygen. Okay, so hence myoglobin is something which can only be afforded to be present in muscle cells. Okay, and its supply is exhausted because oxyhemoglobin will not be able to support itself, because the entire oxygen would have, almost 50% of oxygen would have gone. Okay, so myoglobin acts as a source of oxygen in muscles at rest and dissociates only when PO2 falls considerably, which is an advantage for the muscles. So myoglobin basically acts as a source of oxygen in muscles at rest. It acts as a source of oxygen. See, when muscles are at rest, okay, they would not need that much of oxygen. So hemoglobin will not waste its oxygen out here. Myoglobin will handle this. Okay, so acts as a source of oxygen in muscles at rest and dissociates only when PO2 falls considerably, when the partial pressure of oxygen falls considerably. And when will it happen? When we are into some heavy exercise. Okay, so that is when it will be released, which is an advantage for the muscles. Okay, so let's say if we talk about the entire flow chart here, the air which is inspired in the lungs, the air which is breathed in the lungs, it is going into the oxygen, it is taken in as oxygen in the alveoli of lungs. The oxygen enters the blood plasma. Blood plasma, it will have a very less percentage, approximately 1 to 2 percentage, 1 to 2% blood plasma, and then it goes to the RBC. So RBC has the maximum content of oxygen because it contains the pigment hemoglobin. So this dissolved oxygen in plasma, so then there are two formats. One is dissolved oxygen in plasma, which is very less, and the other format is the oxyhemoglobin. This oxyhemoglobin is carried up to the tissues. This oxyhemoglobin is carried up to the tissues where the exchange will take place. Now the oxyhemoglobin in tissue capillaries, so the oxygen is supplied basically, dissolution of oxyhemoglobin to release oxygen in blood plasma. So what will happen is, now in blood plasma this oxygen will be released. So oxyhemoglobin in tissue capillaries, then the dissolution. So O2 leaves the blood plasma and enters the tissue fluid. So basically O2 will first be released in the blood plasma and then it will move to the tissues. So let's say the tissue is here, and this is basically the capillary. So O2 will be first released here, the oxyhemoglobin will dissociate here and it will be released in the blood plasma. So obviously all of a sudden in the blood plasma the content of O2 will become higher and then it will diffuse out into the tissues. So the dissolution of oxyhemoglobin to release oxygen in blood plasma. I'm sorry. So this oxygen now leaves the blood plasma and enters the tissue fluid. By diffusion, this oxygen will obviously leave the blood plasma and enter the tissue fluid. So from the tissue fluid, oxygen enters the tissue cells. So from the tissue fluid it will enter obviously the tissue cells. So this oxygen is consumed in the cells and hence RBCs move to the tissue capillaries to pick up oxygen from the lungs. These RBCs again move to the lungs to pick up oxygen and again circulate. So this entire circulatory system continues to happen. So this is basically a network as to how it actually happens. Okay. Okay, so here we will see how sometimes carbon monoxide is basically, see, we all know that carbon monoxide is a poisonous gas. What do we actually mean by poisonous gas? When it is consumed in high quantity, it might choke a person to death. Okay. Now there are various ways. We when we actually go into village areas, we have seen those furnaces or burners which are basically called chulhas. Okay, so these chulhas, when they are actually the cow dung is burning and the coal has just caught fire, so the first gas that is basically released is carbon monoxide, and after that, when it actually catches proper fire and all, it is safe to use. So when that chulha is in the stage of burning, the doors and windows are opened, or they keep it outside the house. Okay, so there is a reason why it happens. It burns your it causes an inflaming sensation to the eyes. Okay, so now we have to understand why carbon monoxide has a poisoning effect. Okay, now the hemoglobin of the blood combines almost, has a very high affinity, we have seen, for oxygen, but almost 250 times it has affinity high for carbon monoxide. Okay, so the affinity to combine with oxygen of hemoglobin is already there, but the affinity to combine with carbon monoxide is almost 250 times more than that of oxygen. Okay, so this basically is something that is a concern. So in the presence of carbon monoxide, so what the hemoglobin will do is, now instead of combining with oxygen, it will start combining with carbon monoxide. Okay, and it forms a stable compound, carboxyhemoglobin. If you remember, oxyhemoglobin is an unstable compound, but carboxyhemoglobin is a stable compound. Okay, so at times what happens is, there were many previous cases in which, let's say, a driver starts off the AC and goes off to sleep inside the car. He has parked his car and the driver goes off to sleep, and what happens is, maybe, see, in the AC pipes we have carbon monoxide gas. Many a times you would have seen that the gas pressure actually reduces, and that's when the maintenance part comes in. They actually fill it with the carbon monoxide gas so that proper cooling can happen. Now if there is a leakage, then what will happen? This entire compartment will get filled with carbon monoxide, and this person might die. This person might be choked to death. Okay, so carbon monoxide, hemoglobin has a very high affinity for carbon monoxide. The moment it gets it will start combining with it, and obviously the oxyhemoglobin that was getting formed, that quantity will become lesser and lesser. Okay, so what happens is, the tissues suffer from oxygen starvation. Okay, so these tissues which were actually getting their oxygen supply from the blood, which was carrying the oxyhemoglobin, since the percentage has reduced significantly, they will suffer from oxygen starvation, and that leads to asphyxiation. Okay, that leads to asphyxiation, and in extreme cases this might lead to death. Okay, so this is all because of a very high affinity of hemoglobin for carbon monoxide. So the person, if at all there is a reported case when the person has suffered this, okay, the person needs to be given pure oxygen and carbon dioxide mixture. He has to be supplied with oxygen mixture to increase the content of oxygen so as to dissociate carbon monoxide from hemoglobin. The pressure has to be too high for the carbon monoxide now to dissociate with hemoglobin. Okay, so these kind of cases might happen. Where can this happen? This might happen in closed rooms with open stove burners, as I said, or furnaces, because when it starts burning, the first gas that is released is basically carbon dioxide, and after the coal has caught fire or the animal dung has properly caught fire, then it will be carbon dioxide. So garages having running automobile engines, okay, in garages, if it is completely closed, it will be a huge production of carbon monoxide. So these things are things which we need to avoid. Okay, now we'll talk about transport of carbon dioxide. We have already seen how oxygen gets transported. Now we'll talk about transport of carbon dioxide. Now carbon dioxide is highly soluble in water and it is carried both by plasma and RBCs. So plasma also carries it in the blood as well as RBCs also carry it. It is transporting. So as an active cell gives out carbon dioxide. We are not talking about inactive cells. We have seen how inactive cells, even if their partial pressure of oxygen is lower, still the hemoglobin will not dissociate to release the carbon dioxide to the inactive cells because it is not needed. Okay. So as an active cell gives out carbon dioxide, it enters the blood where about 5 to 8% forms the solution, okay, in the blood plasma, and the rest 90 to 95% enters the RBCs. Okay. So 5 to 8% forms the solution, okay, in the blood plasma, and the rest 90 to 95% enters the RBCs, where it is transferred by two ways. So if you see, blood plasma is one way of transfer, and by blood itself it is transferred in two ways. So in total we are having three ways of carbon dioxide transfer, which we are going to cover in the next slide. So this is how the entire carbon dioxide is basically transferred. Okay. Alright, so we will now consider the transport of carbon dioxide. So as we have seen, some amount of it is basically dissolved in plasma and the rest is carried by the RBCs. So in transport of carbon dioxide, carbonic acid is as carbonic acid by plasma in solution form. So this is basically transferred in plasma in the form of carbonic acid. How? As we saw that carbon dioxide is comparatively more soluble in water, so it will form carbonic acid. However, the formation of this carbonic acid is a very slow process. Very slowly it happens, and hence this is just to a tune of 5 to 8% by plasma. So carbonic acid by plasma in the solution form is just to a tune of 5 to 8%. So here the carbon dioxide combines with water to form carbonic acid. A very slow process, hence a very little amount is transferred in this way. So if we look, the partial pressure of carbon dioxide in venomous blood, or basically the deoxygenated blood, is basically 45 millimeter of Hg, whereas the partial pressure in atrial blood is 40 millimeter of Hg. We have already considered these figures. Okay. So partial pressure of CO2 in venomous blood is 45 millimeter of Hg, and this carries approximately 2.7 milliliter of CO2 per 100 milliliter of blood. Obviously, since the partial pressure is higher here, this volume is also higher. In atrial blood, this is to a tune of 40 millimeter of Hg, and it carries approximately 2.4 milliliter of carbon dioxide per 100 milliliter of blood. So this is basically the amount of oxygen that is the amount of carbon dioxide that is present in the blood. There is another way in which this oxygen carbon dioxide gets carried. So as carboaminohemoglobin. So carboaminohemoglobin, this is basically to a tune of 20 to 25%, which is a significant percentage. What happens is some amount of carbon dioxide that enters the RBCs forms a reversible compound with amino group, that is NH2. This forms a reversible compound of the globin. See, hemoglobin basically has two parts. One is the heme part and one is the protein part. So here this protein part is basically the amino group with which it will combine. So this is the globin or the protein part. So there is the hemo part and there is the globin part. So this globin part is basically the protein part with which the carbon dioxide will combine, and this will be a part of reduced hemoglobin. So this will be reduced hemoglobin plus carbon dioxide. This will form carboaminohemoglobin and H plus ions will be formed. Okay. So this is the other way in which it will be transported. We have to look into the third way as well in which carbon dioxide gets transferred.